we're going to be black wherever we are, and we're going to take our culture with us. The population trends say that we show up where you expect us to be, in the South, in the Northeast, in the Midwest. We're also showing up in places you don't expect us to be, like Utah and Minnesota. Today, let's talk about it on Mama We Made It. So in our production meeting, as we kind of organize these things and talk it through, I saw something that made me want to ask the question, what's your favorite Kanye album?
Probably Drop Off for me.
Okay.
Late Registration for me.
Okay.
You? How about you?
Yeah, it's hard to pick amongst the kids, but I'm probably Late Registration.
Okay.
But Last Call on Dropout is my all-time favorite. Just conversation of him talking and telling stories. And again, the caveat or the asterisk here is, yes, we all miss the old Kanye. We're not going to talk about this N-word that we're dealing with right now, today's times. But the old kids, there was a time, right? So, yeah, I'll say Late Registration, but Last Call is definitely my favorite cut. But I love Addiction off of Late Registration. Is it money? Is it girls? Is it we? All three? My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy is up there as well. And I am, well, we ain't doing Kanye today, but suffice to say,
you won't get a lot out of me on that.
Doing
that cat's on a journey now, man. For a minute, I was trying to be understanding, and I'm always trying to do that. The cat has lost me now, man. So I have no problem saying that. And if he needs some help, I hope he gets it. But he's just spraying venom now. It's just some odd stuff going on.
He's just spraying venom.
Odd stuff going on.
Yeah, he's gone.
Spraying venom, but also can recognize one thing, especially having come off of Sly Lives. He is a sample guru and uses some really great samples, including Sly music adjacent to that has been, which just goes to show really how great Sly and that whole squad was. I mean, because 30, 40 years later, here we are. So
at some point, we have to flip an episode around musical influences, top 3, top 5. I would love for us to do that at some point too.
Okay. Yeah, I like that. I like that. Welcome to Mama We Made It with DJ and Reg. That's DJ. I'm Reg. We are blessed to have a guest today, our often creative collaborator and muse and great friend of the show, Nakeia Medcalf. Welcome. Good to see you again. How you doing? Question for you, Nakeia. Since you live off the grid in parts unknown outside of this fair United States of America, who cuts your hair?
Oh, well, it doesn't matter where I go. I always find a barber. Currently, Uriel is my barber. And he cold. Yeah. I think all the Black people that I know go to this man in Mexico City. So, yeah, he's the truth.
Dig it.
Always tight and right.
Dig it.
Yeah.
Always tight and right. I missed the part, though. I hope the part comes back.
The part will come back. It'll come back.
How do you pick which side?
I don't know. Right side is the side. I think that's the side for me. I haven't tried it on the left. Okay. Maybe I will, but I just feel like that's my side.
Dig it. Well, today, Mama, we made it. We're going to talk about centers of Blackness. This is a topic, Nakeia, that you brought up and teased with us, and it kind of comes out of our last discussion regarding the Pew Research study and the data around kind of, facts on the Black population in the United States and kind of where we live and how trend lines are going. It is interesting to me that we are all, the three of us, are from the Midwest. When you were growing up, like, how did you think about, where Blackness was emanating from in your world? Like, what was the center of Blackness for you, Nakeia, growing up?
what people forget or maybe don't know is how black Milwaukee is. It's in Wisconsin,
Okay.
which is hella white, but
Yep.
Milwaukee itself is upwards 30, 40, 50% black. And so for me, I think the center of blackness is all over Milwaukee. Definitely was a part of Boys and Girls Club type
Yeah.
after school stuff. And, you know, church included as well in that. So I would say those community centers, especially for me, is kind of where everything converged. So if you were in dance, if you were in music, if you were in step, if you were in sports, like you somehow had a touch point through the Boys and Girls Club. So I feel like a lot of that happened there for me. What about y'all?
Similar. I grew up between St. Louis for a time and Des Moines for a time, born in Kalamazoo, but formative years, St. Louis and Des Moines. And in Des Moines, between Old Dowling, which is up the street from me, that was an old kind of Catholic school that was no longer a Catholic school, but it was a gym and it was a rec spot, and you went to play hoop or ping pong, things like that. That was a spot. There was a spot called Wilkie House, which had a lot of after school and weekend programming. The church, for sure, was kind of our activity. And so there was definitely pockets of places where we would congregate and come together beyond the neighborhood, right? Like the street corner, the block was for sure a center of blackness. But in terms of places where we congregated, it was all, as you said, all those after school programs, learning to swim at the Y, catching 2 buses across town to the mall. The mall on a Saturday in Des Moines, the mall was a center of blackness, right? Because we was all on the bus going out there. And so it was a variety of spaces, but also it was the family trips to the South to see our family, my dad's people in Tennessee, see my mom's people in St. Louis when I had moved away. And so it was definitely the road trip to the family reunion was also an epicenter of blackness that kind of helped me think about just kind of how our people are. And then you get older, you think about, oh, the Mecca and DC and Chocolate City and Harlem and all these bigger places. But growing up, it was the block, the community center, and the road trip for sure.
Yeah, you guys got me going down memory lane as I listen to you. For me, it was always family and sport. Um, I think you guys probably know by now, I was in 5 different states, and that's just states, not cities, prior to 5th grade. And it was basically my mom and I. But every summer, I was back in Battle Creek, Michigan. And that's where the richness of my Black experience comes from. Of course, along with just having my mom, who was always represented Black excellence. But those summers in Battle Creek, Michigan, man, I'll never forget them. Lake Michigan, um, touch football, tackalina, basketball in the driveway. Some of my closest friends I met playing sports. And, I don't think people think of, I Sojourner Truth called Battle Creek home. But I don't think people hear the word Battle Creek or the city Battle Creek and think blackness. But that's the first thing that comes to mind for me. It was rich. It was a different dimension of blackness. I wouldn't call it high intellect, but I would call it steeped in core values. And the intellect sort of birthed from that, and wouldn't change it for the world. Those times when I would be in other cities in school, East Lansing, Michigan, etc., and I was the only Black kid in class, I felt like a fish out of water. But I always felt at home when I was back with my people. So I'm curious, have you guys ever had, whether it was intermittent or consistent bouts of feeling like that fish out of water, whether it was as a kid growing up, education, summer camp, whatever it was, where you didn't feel blackness?
My parents were divorced, and I moved back and forth between Des Moines and St. Louis quite a bit. And there was a cultural shift each time I would go from one of those spaces to the other. I would be in St. Louis long enough to get my Southern accent locked in. I would talk a certain way, them children and all. And I was with my people. And I'd go to Des Moines and they'd be like, you sound crazy. And then I'd be in Des Moines long enough to pick up, a white affectation, if you will, and go back to St. Louis and like, why are you talking white? And so there was more around the cultural tension of how Blackness is expressed. In Des Moines, obviously a much wider space than St. Louis. Because there were enough of us to have critical mass in terms of where we went to school, where we hung out, we went to church. Even though it was wider there, my lived experience was, Black. Like white folks didn't really pierce the veil until you got to school. And even then, we were in such numbers that you felt comfortable. Where it did show up, it was by 7th grade when you would start getting pullouts, right? And you would be like, okay, you're not going to be in, the gym pop English class. You're going to be in one more class. And you walk in like, yo, I thought this school was 30 to 40% Black. And you'd be the only brother in Mrs. Ryerson's English class, and it would be awkward, right? It would be weird. And so it was that where you started to see some space in terms of how classes were being laid out. And there were a handful of us that were, being pulled out in different classes, and that would, show up more as you got into high school. But by and large, it was the intra-community tension more than the inter-community tension.
What about you, Nakeia?
Well, I think a couple of things. I went to, I would say, predominantly white schools by day, and more specifically in Jewish communities. So, that hits even more different. But, the juxtaposition in the afternoon was real. And I felt as though I was by day kind of in this like academic rigor, which I really feel like was a choice more centered around distraction and not necessarily going to school with whomever, because my mother was an educator in Milwaukee public schools for like 20, 30 years. And so I think from her perspective, she didn't want us to be around a lot of distraction, basically, I think. And so we went to the schools that we went to. But when you brought up sports, though I'm not an athlete, I think that just the setting of sports is such a true, honest Black ecosystem, because you didn't have to play the sport to be part of it on the sidelines in community. You could be having snacks or whatever in that part. You could be, I don't know, a cheerleader, whatever. You could just be attending the game. But I just felt like in my experiences of that, with my brother being an athlete, that was a really big epicenter of Blackness for me, without me having to be a true participant. I was just looking cute on the sidelines. And so, yeah, I don't know, fish out of water, maybe in school, but really I'm grateful that I had the juxtaposition that I had, which was as soon as I got off the bus and was on Sherman Park Boulevard, I was back with my peoples.
We talk about it, journey as a kid, growing up, but today, have you guys found, whether through your travels or places you've lived, there seems to be more richness in certain cities? And kind of within that, do you guys feel like you're in those places now individually? Because I know, you in Portland and Mexico City, in my head doesn't resonate Blackness, but I'm curious to know your perspectives on that.
So I was looking at the Pew Center research data, and we've talked about it before in terms of the growth and dispersion of where Black folks are, and places like Utah growing, their Black population growing faster than everywhere else. That's fascinating to me. And so what I would say is, for me, as an adult now, the conversation is around not only where we are in numbers as Black folks, but also culturally where the creative muse is coming from. So as an adult, I can look at the journey of hip hop. Like, I grew up on East Coast hip hop because I was in my 20s in New York. And then the South has something to say. And, the rise of Southern hip hop that has basically taken over the last 20 years of the game and has, got the game on lock, and West Coast hip hop and Midwest hip hop through Common and Kanye and all the things. And I think about how much I've moved and how much Blackness is not only where I'm living, but the uniformity of Black cultural expression that reaches everywhere. So I can be in Portland now and consume a lot of the same content that you would consume in LA, Detroit, Chicago. And so some of that technology has made the world smaller. And so Blackness breaks through everywhere. And so I love that. The other part is, the Great Migration is a real thing, right? So you can be out here in Portland and lament that we are, Black folks are 2% of the state's population and somewhere significantly less than 10% of the Portland population, and yet find community, right? Like there's Black folks who've been here for a minute who are doing things. There's the Black folks who are transient, who come out here for corporate reasons doing things. And so it is really white out here, and that's from somebody who grew up in Des Moines. But there's also something's happening here, right? There's something's bubbling as I look around, particularly at the younger cohort behind me. They're doing things, and there's a lot happening here. And so while the city is the city and the faux progressiveness of the city can lull you to sleep, there is definitely a cultural movement afoot. There's a lot of Black creatives, entrepreneurs, and so I feel the whiteness out here, but I also sense Black community in a way that is inspiring, and I'm excited to see it slowly develop over time. So I don't feel so isolated, other than I'm just way, way away from family. I will say, where it shows up the most, concerts. Anybody that comes out here that I would want to see, not seeing in Portland. I'm going to LA. I'm going to Oakland. I might go to Seattle to see who I want to see, because I can't stand seeing my favorite artist and being in a severe minority in the crowd, and the rhythms not just be rhythming, and it just don't feel right. So I will say it's weird when music hits, because we do get good music, but the crowds are overwhelmingly white in a way that is a bit off-putting for me personally.
It's funny you say that about Portland. I lived in Portland twice. And I remember the first time I lived there, early 2000s, the best you were going to get in terms of Black entertainment was Sir Mix-a-Lot. So I remember being at a Sir Mix-a-Lot concert in Portland, downtown. And to your point, there were probably 5 Black folks from Nike in the crowd. Everybody else was white. What was interesting, my next concert was Robert Glasper in Portland. More Black numbers, but still maybe a 50-50. My last one was D'Angelo in Portland. And I would say probably about 60-40 Black, white. So the musical experience has evolved in cities like, Portland. The numbers are starting to shift a little bit, but I remember, man, Portland had nothing to offer. I think that also speaks to Blackness as well, and the need to cater to Black folks in these cities.
What's interesting is, we are in a really tense political season, right? And so when I see the numbers of, if you look at the Pew Center study that we were talking about in terms of the top 10 cities, right? It makes sense, right? So the New York metro area, 3.8 million Black people. That's the largest number of Black people in the country. You go New York, you go Atlanta metro area, DC metro area, Chicago metro area, all the way down to LA. Those top 10 all make sense to me. Then you start to think about the states, and it changes, right? So then it becomes Florida, Georgia, and Texas as kind of the largest number of Black folks in the country. And that's an interesting thing to watch as well. When I think about politically where our sources of power come from, I'm curious to see how the road ahead goes, right? Because in places like Florida and Georgia, there are a lot of us, but we are so, redlined and gerrymandered and otherwise, manipulated from a political standpoint that our numbers don't really tip the scale fully. And I'm in a marketplace where there's just not enough of us to really move the needle. So you got to look at coalition politics. You got to look at, how you push a broad agenda while still getting the things that you need done. And it's a challenge. It's a real, real challenge. And so, I'm in Portland, it's progressive to a point, but the things that we fully need here don't always manifest, and you can't get the conversation started in any critical way. So whether that's about how the schools should be reformed, whether that's about the tax base and gentrification and how developers move and making amends for all of the racial policy that led to the destruction of thriving Black communities. Like, there's a lot of work to be done, and there's a lot of folks who are doing good work in that space, but the lift is heavy. And so I am curious around our numbers and our culture being everywhere, but our political clout being somewhat watered down and marginalized. And so I worry about how we create leverage in these spaces as the numbers continue to tell us that Black folks are showing up in Utah and Arizona and other places. That's great because we can be wherever we want to be. And I love that. I am not clear on where leverage comes from to get a political agenda afoot and an economic engine afoot that allows us to flex a little bit of our muscle and create outcomes that we're excited about.
I think it's an incredible point. And, you talked about those cities, Texas, Florida, Georgia, and then the Black metros. There's not much overlap when it comes to percentage increase by state since 2010. You have states like Arizona, Nevada, and Minnesota, 60% each increases since 2010. Do I feel it here in Arizona? I live in Scottsdale. I spend much more time now in Phoenix. I do feel that the Black numbers are growing. I also feel like the economic positioning is also probably worsening. So there's definitely a power base here. I'm not sure we're experiencing that in a way that's healthy for a lot of Black folks. So I get concerned about that. What are we moving into? Where are we moving to? Arizona is a really interesting state landscape-wise. And there's some places you probably don't want to live. My concern is that becomes home for a lot of us, unfortunately. So I'm paying attention to that because Arizona is one of those states that's seeing a really, really heavy increase in Black folks. So really interesting perspectives.
Nakeia, one of the stats that I know caught your attention was that between 2010 and 2023, Utah experienced an 89% increase in its Black population. And you hit me to the world of NBA Youngboy, which I had to look. Hey, you see the gray hairs. I don't always know who's who, and I've been seeing his rise. I don't really rock with. I don't know his flow. So put me on game. What's he doing in Utah?
Well, first and foremost, shout out to Max Johnson, who is a big NBA
Young
Youngboy fan. He is a rapper out of Baton Rouge. Came up in the game young, has had many a stint in jail. I believe he might currently be in jail or he just got out of jail. But what caught my eye maybe about a year and a half ago is that he moved to Utah. And when you listen to his music, it's like, Lil Boosie and Wayne had a child who is, reckless. And so for him to move to Utah, which I deem one of the whitest places in the US, and on this Western hemisphere, I must say, for him to move there and set up shop, I was really surprised by that. It's hella Mormon there, all that goes down. And while places like Arizona, Vegas, those stand out to me more as newer centers of where Blackness can exist. Utah is definitely not at the top of the list for me. And so when I saw that, I was taken aback. At the same time, I mean, he could definitely be starting some kind of movement there, and some kind of safe space for people. But I'm not sold on it. And you won't catch me moving to Utah unless, I don't know. But, it's hella money in Utah. If you Mormons aside, like there's opportunity there. So I was just showing Reg NBA Youngboy's like Instagram, and he was posted up with a family.
He outside.
He out
He's
here. He
absolutely outside. Well, he inside right now, but he absolutely was outside. And no disrespect. I'm not trying to make fun of him. I was fascinated because it does feel like a mini version of a Great Migration, which is Blackness can indeed exist anywhere, and to flourish and thrive is about community. And in places where the Black population is growing but really, really small, I am always curious to see stories of how communities being built, whether that is through food, music, religious expression, other artistic expression. And so I'm always paying attention to how the popcorn is popping, and like where is it bubbling up? Because culturally, you still hear all the conversation coming from places you expect, right? All throughout the South. In the West, it's LA, it's Oakland. There's definitely a proud Black tradition in Seattle. But a lot of these places off the beaten path, Black folks are showing up, and quite frankly, it overlaps with the increasing number of interracial relationships, right? Like these two things are not unrelated. And so when I see the commercial landscape of all these interracial couples in these commercials, and I think about Black folks showing up in Utah and Arizona, all other places, that it all starts to come together in some interesting milieu. And then we'll talk about it over time. But I am fascinated by how it is being expressed in a cultural landscape, because like you, having been in a place that ain't really a mecca of Blackness like Des Moines, Iowa, and now being in Portland, when I see Utah on the map, I'm like, that's curious. We'll see how that experiment goes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we're probably running up on time. I think the last thing too is there is definitely the richness of the Black experience. And then also, I just find myself, man, being here in Arizona, just wanting to be able to breathe and have some space. And so going up to Sedona does that for me, golfing in Sedona, not having to think about the city and metro. So I wonder how much that has to do with it as well, when you start to think about some of these states. Because I don't know, Post Malone, I think MJ may have a spot in Utah, Will Smith.
You call Post Malone Black? What we saying?
So you start to...
Are we calling Post Malone Black? What we saying? I'm sorry. I missed how he got in the box.
No. No. Definitely ain't doing that. I'm talking about a migration from folks who might not necessarily think. Yeah, definitely not that. That said, I think there's something about just wanting to breathe as well and experience nature, et cetera. And I found that here in Arizona, even though there's definitely some challenges here. The other part of Utah, though, is there is a supremacist subset in Utah that's alive and well, Idaho, Washington, Oregon. So that'll be an interesting juxtaposition as well, as that evolves and continues to happen.
I'm glad you said the outdoor thing, though, man, because Portland is healthy living. Like the outdoor, the fresh air, the farm to table, being in the mountains, being in the gorge, being at the coast, which is not a beach, by the way. It's not the shore, it's a shore, but it's not the beach. It's cold as hell in that water. But being outdoors out here, man, in fresh air, while I watch all the EPA rollback and other places, man, I'm like, there is something to healthy living, more space, and not feeling the oppressiveness of all the things that's happening in the climate change standpoint. So we find joy wherever we are. We carry our Blackness with us wherever we go, and we create spaces and opportunities. And community is how we get free. Check out some of these newer spaces. Just don't get caught slipping. Think that's it for today's Mama We Made It. Nakeia, thank you for coming. We always love it when you come and bless us with your wisdom and your wit. DJ, good to see you, brother. Peace and blessings to the audience. We'll see y'all later.
See you soon.